So what happens with a lot of people who are pedophiles is they were assaulted when they were children, which is why I assume that was part of it. I've only read parts of this book, but she may have felt safe around children as a child because all the adults in her life were terrifying. So now as an adult, she still feels safe around children, but that leads to sexual proclivities too, such as pedophilia.
Well,
not an excuse, not defending it by any means, just explaining it.
She says that she is an autoandrophile.
Okay.
That she is sexually aroused at the thought of her as a man.
Yeah.
And then she has children call her male things. I'm like, she is intentionally trying to use these children for her sexual kink.
So this is the author saying these things?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's her memoir. Or whatever.
It's her memoir.
And they put that book in middle schools. And so I bring this up because when I get into this stuff, I'm like, I can't believe this stuff. They have it in front of kids. I have a friend who is gay, and when I'm talking to her about it, I'm like, look, like, me, like, I don't care about you and the people you love and you care about. You're one of my best friends. I want you to be happy. But you got to see this book. I mean, they're showing children these overt adult acts. And she said, no way. And I was like, let me show you the book because I have it. I show her the book and she goes, yeah, but there's no way that's in grade schools. And I'm like, let me pull up the story and show you that Ron DeSantis specifically was like, this should not. And when he tried to get it banned, they say he's banning books.
Right.
You know what's ironic about the banning books thing or burning books thing is what the left is doing. They're taking Roald Dahl and they're editing his books.
Right.
That is closer to book burning than saying, no, you children can't read this book. Everybody else can, children can't. It's putting a limit on this, like but going into a store and buying pornography, you have to be 18. Like, that's not book burning,
Are your books in schools?
We are in a very small amount of schools. Scholastic is the big behemoth when it comes to kids' books. So they're the world's largest children's book publisher, but by far the largest children's book distributor. So they get all kids' books into schools, libraries, Barnes & Noble, bookstores, everything. And so, yeah, if you're really looking at sort of who to point fingers to, I mean, there's probably people that I'm not aware of, groups that are making sure these get in curriculums and things like that. But Scholastic is definitely
Captured.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
If you look at their, like, who owns the bulk of Scholastic, you see the same people: BlackRock, Vanguard.
Wow.
They're
so
the largest
creepy.
shareholders.
They're trying to capture the world with CEI, DEI, and ESG.
I think it look, I don't want to be conspiratorial. So I often put it simply as intent doesn't matter, actions and results matter. The implication is the actions speaking louder than words, and the results are these people are Malthusian. They want less people. There's too many human beings on this planet. Now, look, man, I'm not going to disagree that we've got pollution problems, that people who live in cities live like slobs. I'm sorry, man. I'm not trying to be mean to the average person, but living out in a rural area, you drive around and what do you see? I mean, people compost, people have gardens, people have animals. They produce a little bit of their own food. It's way more sustainable. You see solar panels everywhere because they got good sunlight. You'll go to cities, it's the opposite. Hyper concentration of filth, pollution, garbage. So look, I get it. But you end up with these massive multinational corporations that are actually plaguing society with ills and detriment. That's not going to improve things. Improving the system, if you're upset about it, is through what you're doing with these books for kids. It's teaching kids good moral behaviors. Instead, it feels like there are powerful elites who are just like, let's just get rid of them. We're not going to cull, but we will sterilize, abort, and promote morbid obesity and other ails and things like that.
Yeah, it definitely, I see where you're coming from. But if there are going to be people, we want them sexualized from an early age. We want them confused. We want them.
They're saying that.
Yeah. Yeah, not Brave Books.
That's a weird thing for you to promote.
Whoa.
Yeah.
No, but I was thinking about this too, and I'm like, intent is irrelevant, right? You come out and say there's a large group of power. It was really funny. I said that the world is controlled by powerful elites, and then Media Matters called me a conspiracy theorist, and I was just like, if you go to Greta Thunberg and ask her if the world is controlled by powerful executives who have bad intentions and want to destroy the planet, she will say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the oil companies, the big financial firms. I'm like, that's literally my point. But we don't even need to say that. You've got all of these policies that just end with one result: less human beings. And I was thinking about, okay, sterilizing kids is very obvious. You take a kid, put them on puberty blockers, the likelihood that they're able to have children drops substantially. Some may be able to get a puberty blockers and resume normal puberty, but it's not absolute. There's going to be a large amount of people. I was reading this website. We read it on IRL. It says, warning, about this, you may never develop the ability to have sexual reproduction.
Yeah, Mayo Clinic says that.
So you'll end up with people who can't have kids. You end up with people being sterilized, women getting mastectomies, or young teenage girls getting mastectomies. And the end result is these people can't have kids. Then you're promoting abortion. And then I thought about but what about the weird grooming stuff? I think, what does that result in? Whether it's intentional or not, if you have people who grow up with a normal, healthy education and responsible parents, they're likely going to get married, have kids. That is like the default human behavior. But what if you start abusing them and twisting their minds? They'll grow up and start engaging in activities related to like weird objects and paraphilias, and those things don't result in children.
Yeah.
So what is the suicide rate of the trans community?
My understanding is that's very high. I'm not entirely sure.
So they're inducting children into a cult with a high suicide rate, which goes right back to depopulation.
Perhaps. I mean, I do think it's fair to say that endocrine disruptors are a component as to why we're seeing so many trans kids right now. And it's not so simple to just say it's all social. Mm-hmm. I do think there's a social element to it. And it could be correlation and causation could come in either direction. That is to say, the reason we're seeing so much of this ideological bent in towards kids is because there are people who were born of endocrine disruption whose hormonal imbalances has resulted in them saying, this is who I am, and I want what I see to be spread around. But I think if you look at genderqueer, it really breaks down very, very well what the bulk of what's happening is. Parents abused their child severely. That kid does not understand it's abuse because it's normalized.
And they have books about abuse that kids could read, like They Cage the Animals Up at Night and A Child Called It. These are books available I read them in middle school. But the theme of that book is that this was very bad, and here is how I've overcome it and grown into a person. For her, it's like, this is because I was a woman. Like, she's faulting, people, but also not understanding what happened to her. Like, but these other books have a reflective, like, I'm going to tell you my experience, but I'm telling you from a point of knowing that it was wrong and it was bad now as an adult who's adjusted.
You were an ophthalmologist.
Yeah.
How did you go from that to making these books?
Well, started when I had my first daughter, Charlotte. But before that, so my fourth year of med school, I started a test prep publishing company, just because I started to get a sense that I was not going to like doing medicine full time. So I started that. It grew and became pretty successful. I started a second publishing company where we did joke books, and then I was practicing a pretty good amount, not full time. And then I became a Christian in 2019, early 2019.
Oh, wow.
Very, very quickly there. After that, met the woman who's now my wife, and we got married quickly, then had a kid in the summer of 2020. So this is like peak COVID craziness, peak just craziness. And within the first few weeks of her life, it's sort of like getting a new car where you see that new car everywhere because it's raised in the love of your awareness. After I had no idea that there was this indoctrination of our kids. It was not on my radar. When she was born, it was like I was seeing it everywhere. Oh, I was seeing it Barnes and Noble. The number one book on Amazon was Anti-Racist Baby. And then what really sort of put me over the edge was I saw that trailer for the film Cuties.
Oh, yeah.
And, Charlotte, she's going to be that age before I know it. And just thinking about the world that she's going to be growing up in, I could not get it out of my head for whatever reason. And I was just always thinking about that issue. And then this idea for Brave Books, Freedom Island started to come into my mind. And eventually the the vision for it was too fun, and it just seemed like a fun fight to get into, and a worthwhile fight, and it'd be a challenge. So eventually I decided to go for it, and sent out some. My fear was that I didn't want to launch a company and nobody hear about it. So I reached out to different conservative influencers. Ashley St. Clair responded, wrote back, said, "Oh, I'd love to do this. This needs to happen." And worked with her. And
Brilliant.
First book was Elephants Not Birds, and then started the Freedom Island Book Club, where our subscribers get a new book every single month that teaches a new, traditional value. And then the rest is history. And we've had a lot of success. We're up over 30 employees and growing,
Wow.
growing crazy. Yeah.